G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, Season 2, Episode number 15. Today, I'm excited to introduce Danielle Henry, a nurse of over 10 years who in just a few short months has taken her passion for photography and turned it into a blossoming career in wedding photography and family photography. Now, one of the biggest requests that I've had on this podcast since starting it has been to get someone on who isn't at the height of their career, someone who is just starting out in their creative journey, to go through some of the struggles that they face when they're first starting, because I think it can be easy for us to forget how hard it was when we were just starting our business, and interviewing people who have already made it often seems for a lot of people unattainable. So I wanted to actually go back and speak to someone who is just starting their business, and Danielle is the perfect person for that. In this episode, we talk all about the highs and lows of starting a photography business, starting a creative business, what it's like to run that on the side, as well as working as a nurse, which Danielle does. Danielle is also a mum. How should she balance that, working and also taking care of a child, having multiple different things, wearing a lot of hats as well. And we dive deep into that in today's episode. Danielle also expressed the importance of investing in education and setting up strong foundation in her business, and being a success of why she's been able to turn her business into something that is thriving within the first year of starting. And I think that was super inspiring for a lot of people to hear out there who are just maybe thinking about ending a job and starting something fresh, or thinking about starting something on the side of a job that they're working in. So hopefully through this episode, you'll gain a lot of valuable information, a lot of tips and tricks about what you can do to start your own business on the side of something that you're already doing, and how you can build that up to a point where maybe you can possibly give away your other job if that is something that you are looking to do. So I hope that this episode is insightful. I tried to, ask a lot of interesting questions of what it was like for Danielle first starting, and Danielle definitely shared a lot of invaluable advice as well. So I'm very appreciative for her for coming on this episode. I think it was very brave of her to jump on and talk about a lot of these things, and I hope that you guys are able to get so much out of that. But without further ado, let's throw it over to Danielle to introduce herself and talk about her creative journey. Hey Mike. Well, hello, Danielle. Thank you for coming on the podcast today and having a conversation with me. Really special to be able to talk to you today. The first place that I really wanted to start and wanted to really jump into this conversation was asking you, how would you describe yourself, or what would you say your title is to someone who you may be like meeting for the first time, or someone who's asking you what it is that you do for a living?
So, hello. First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. This is such an amazing opportunity for me. So how would I introduce myself? So I'm very new to photography. But I do consider myself to have two professions. So primarily at the moment, my main job role is being a nurse. So I'm a trained nurse, and I've done that for around about 10 years now. And then since April this year, I've picked up photography. So I'm a wedding and family photographer. And I started off this year in April calling myself a beginner photographer. But I now do consider myself a professional photographer. So that is how I'd introduce myself.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think for a lot of us, I especially went through a long stage of not actually telling people I was a photographer. Even though I had been working as a photographer, it would still kind of felt like something that I did on the side. And there's that thing, I think, with a little bit of fear around, well, what if it doesn't work out? And if I've told everyone that I am a photographer, what happens if it doesn't work out, or if I change or something happens? Because, in those early days, things can come up and you can go in different directions. And I think that's important, being able to recognize when is time to go in a different direction. But there's that fear as well of owning it to yourself or to new people and saying, no, I am a photographer. When did that stage come for you in your journey?
So when I first started photography, I started my Instagram back in April, and I thought I'll just do this for fun. Just upload some pictures whilst I'm taking them, mostly of my children. And then I joined I invested in a course, and I was literally it was 5 days after I'd started my Instagram. And at this point I was like, I don't know if I am going to do it as a business, or I'm not sure where this is going to go. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, I'm going to go for this. And so from then on, I started taking photos of other people then and getting clients, and it's all gone from there.
How did that mindset sort of come about for you just to jump straight in? Because I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of apprehension when, especially for you, like changing careers. And we'll talk about yourself being a nurse in a little bit. But I think for a lot of people, jumping into something so heavy that is so new can be daunting. Is there something in your personality? Has that always been something for you that you would just throw yourself in?
No, it's actually really out of character for me. When I first started, I didn't think anybody would pay me to take photos of them. I didn't think I was good enough. My husband's actually a videographer, so he's been trying to get me to do photography for quite a few years, and I've said no, I wouldn't be good enough at it. And then this year I was suddenly like, yes, I'll give it a go.
What was like one of the hardest things, I guess, when it came to really throwing yourself in, really putting yourself out there?
I think the fear of what other people would think, especially because of my nursing background. Photography is very different, and there are definitely things that can apply to both, and there's skills that I've definitely brought over from my nursing career. But yeah, I was a bit worried that people would think, well, you're not a photographer. Where did this come from?
You've been a nurse for 10 years. That has obviously taken up a big portion of your life, and you've been doing that for quite a long time. I'm sure for you it was very deep in your personality of who you are. I'm sure previously you probably would have introduced yourself as a nurse. How did that start for you? Let's go back to when you were first starting, as a nurse. How did you get into that profession?
So I worked as a healthcare assistant in a local hospital. This is when I left college. Absolutely fell in love with the job, and then decided that I want to go to university to then train as a nurse. Did my training. I did a year on orthopedic ward, and then since then I've been an A&E nurse. With photography, you hear so many people saying, I can't wait to leave my 9 to 5, I can't wait to leave my job. But I don't think I'll ever leave nursing completely, because I don't have to. It's something I've worked really hard towards, and I'm very lucky, and I'm in quite a privileged position that I can do both together.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think for a lot of people, as you said, they're very keen to leave a job that they don't like. And yes, that can be a great place to start. And I think for a lot of people, it's a good sort of motivator to get out of a profession that they don't like, and a good reason to take up a creative path like photography and go and do something very different outside of what they've been doing. I think that's important for a lot of people. But I think there's a big group of people as well who really love their job. And the idea of then starting something else or pursuing something else on the side is scary, because it's like, how can I enjoy both of these things at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. It's being able to like combine two different passions, because they are very different. So photography gives me that like creativity, which nursing doesn't as much, because obviously you've got to follow guidelines and things like that. So whereas the photography, it gives me that little bit of an outlet.
Well, were you always set on not ending the nursing? Like, or was that something that has come about recently, or were you always like, I'm just going to do photography as well as?
So my little boy is still not at school, so I've got little ones. So I've got a 5-year-old little girl and a 2-year-old little boy. So I do only work part-time in nursing, which is why I've got the time to do photography on the side. And when I picked up photography, I said, I'm just going to see how it goes, see where this takes me. And doing the photography has actually made me realise I don't ever want to give up my nursing. And again, I'm in a very lucky position where I don't ever have to. If I don't need to, I can give up certain aspects or how I do it, but I don't ever have to give it up. So I am very privileged in that sense. There are a lot of similarities between the two in terms of it's working with people. All of my photography, I love taking photos of people. I've tried taking like pictures of landscapes and things like that, and I don't find that as interesting as taking pictures of people. And I think the nursing gives me a really unique perspective in the sense of I'm around a lot of emotion in my nursing job role. So being able to pick up little bits of emotion where maybe other people might not see it. I think that's a skill that I can take across to my photography. So again, it's just another passion. It's like two things that I'm really, really passionate about.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because for me, I think, when I was first starting, I worked in hospitality as well alongside of photography. And for a long time, I was reluctant to end it, even though it sort of wasn't financially viable for me because I wasn't making as much money in that as I was with photography. But I enjoyed sticking at it because of the interaction with other people. And yes, there's that aspect of being a creative person. You often spend a lot of time working alone. There's that whole aspect, and that sort of fulfilled that part of me of being like, well, I get to go and actually see people, a day a week, 2 days a week. At least I can do that. But aside of that was like talking to other people, like talking to our customers and getting to know them, understanding them, is just that human connection that I think actually relates so well to what you just said in being a photographer, because a lot of what we do is working with other people, and being able to build connection with people is the best way in my mind to take great images of people, because if you can build a good connection, they become comfortable with you, you know how to work with them to bring out certain emotion.
Yeah, definitely. I think I obviously strive in sort of stressful situations, being an A&E nurse, and then I really like weddings, like photographing weddings. So I think to some people that might be their worst nightmare, but I love it.
I was having this conversation recently with someone who said that they would never do like a wedding photography because it was just too scary. It was just too daunting, and they didn't know how I did it. And to me, it was like, it's kind of the only thing that I've done, really. Like, I have done other types of photography, but as soon as I did it, I was like, this is all I want to do, because it was so like invigorating that to have that heightened sense and to be there on such a special day for other people. How was your first experience of wedding photography?
I was quite lucky in the sense that my first ever experience, I had my husband with me, so I had a lot of support. And then my first solo wedding was a very small one. So I think I've been like edged into it very, very slowly. And I have invested in courses. I have like a wedding course, which goes through every aspect of the day. So even though I have not done many weddings yet, I've learned a lot about them. So I feel ready.
I was the same. I went to my first wedding having not ever been to one before as a guest even. And so it's a daunting experience not knowing how it goes, but I had done so much prep and so much research on what happens on the day. I'd spoken to the guys who were getting married, and we'd planned out the timeline. Like, I knew everything that was going to be happening. And for me, it was so important to have that, because I was thinking back, it was like, how would I have learned that had I not been able to research it? Because that's just the type of person I am, that I go heavy into researching everything that I really want to know.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And I think, yeah, how would that experience have gone? For you, you said that, I mean, the ones you've done have been quite small, and I think that that's important for other people to hear as well. Like, when you're first starting, the jobs aren't huge, and so it sort of scales with you and with your skill set and with your understanding. Like, you're never going to get a client when you're first starting who has these really high expectations of you, because they know where you're at, And so they've only booked you for you. And when you're starting, they know you're starting. So as long as you're open and honest with that, I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you get that first job or that first opportunity?
So the very first wedding I did, I put a post on Facebook and just said, I'm brand new to photography. I've never shot a wedding before. Will anybody let me shoot their wedding for free? And people got in touch with me. So I did my very first one for free. And then since then, I've charged for every other one, but just slowly sort of edging up my prices. To have the confidence to actually charge somebody to take photos of their wedding, that was a hard concept for me to get my head around at first.
Was that easier after you'd done the first one for free?
Yes, because my confidence in myself grew when I thought, yes, I can do this.
I was the exact same. And I started working for free. And eventually I'd built the confidence to then charge. And I think a lot of people, there's this whole thing of people being against working for free. And I'm very much for it because I think it's that training phase. And I was always like, I'd rather work for myself for free than go and work for someone else, because there's that whole other avenue you could go down of working for someone else and almost interning under them for a few years before you can actually charge your own and start your own work. I was like, look, I'm just going to do that all for me so that then I have it. But it also, I think it sets you up because you do gain a level of confidence. But the other thing I think is that you understand how much work is involved.
Yeah, definitely.
And for you, was that like, had you hit that point in that first one where you're like, I now know how much is involved in this. I'm now more comfortable to charge X amount.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm more trustworthy in the sense of I feel confident to charge people now because I'm confident in my skills and my knowledge. So I think if I was charging and I didn't feel confident, then that would be, for me, that's not what I want to portray.
It's a hard place to sort of charge something or a price that you're not comfortable with. And I think there's this big thing going around of like, increase your prices. And I think empowering people to increase their prices is very important. But if you don't have the confidence in your own abilities or skill set, increasing your prices will actually hurt you. And I think that because you won't push your services as much, if you're not confident with the price you're charging, you won't advertise as much. You won't sell yourself as hard because you're not confident. You're a bit on the back seat about saying, oh, well, here's my prices. Please don't reject me at this rate because, I need the work. Whereas if you're comfortable at the price you're at, you can probably get more work to build that confidence up. It's that double-edged sword. And I think trying to raise a price from a position of not having work is scary because every job sort of rides on the client accepting that price.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I'm very new to photography. I started this business in April. So I've kind of tried to like jump in with 2 feet and just go for it. I've tried to sort of build my business with like a really good foundation. And like I said, I've invested in courses. Like being part of the community is really, really helpful. And just being able to get the knowledge from other people is just amazing.
One of the things I think was important, I'm sure, for you is your job as a nurse. And for a lot of people considering whether to change careers and jump into something creative, the option is either do I sort of give this up straight away and jump head first, or do I sort of try to build something on the side? I wanted to touch on a few things there because I think that there's a lot of things we could unpack. For you, you were saying you invested in courses and you were happy to charge a price on your work. Did that come about from already knowing that you have another job with a stable income or something that you could fall back on? How helpful has that been?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I would have been able to have funded the things I've done quite so well if I didn't already have another income. I guess with that said, the fact that I am still working and I have 2 children, it does limit my photography. So I guess if I didn't have another income, it would give me more of a push to push my photography. And that's, I guess, the decision that people need to make, because I'm happy with the balance that I've got at the moment. I know that over the next couple of years, I can keep going and keep getting practice, getting experience, and kind of doing what I'm doing. And then when my little one goes to school, I will be able to up my photography anyway. So I'm happy with that's like my long-term goal. Some people, I think, want to jump in and go full force straight away, whereas I know that's not the case for me. And I'm happy with that.
That's great, because I think everyone has their unique advantage. Everyone has something that they can swing in their favor. And for you, having, an income to be able to fast track what you've done, to be able to invest in courses, to be able to invest in, and I'm sure like your gear as well, in making sure that you're the best photographer you possibly can, has allowed you to do it in under 8 months to get to a point where you're at now. But for other people, maybe they didn't have that income. Maybe they need to have more time. And maybe if you've got more time in your hands, maybe, for a lot of people out there, if they're early in their career and they've got more time and they need to end the job to throw themselves all in, well, that's their advantage that they have over someone like yourself who has kids and has other commitments in life. So everything, is a trade-off, and important, I think, that you gave yourself a plan in a way, because you just couldn't throw everything away and start from scratch. What was the plan for you in your head of being like, how long were you going to give yourself to kind of make this work?
My little boy starts school in 2026. So that's when, until then, I'm going to go slow and steady. I've got six weddings next year, and I've cut myself off there because I think I want to give my all to the weddings that I do have. And to some people, 6 weddings is nothing. But to me, that's amazing.
What do you think at the moment, sort of outside of skill set and outside of actual time, what is something that you think is kind of holding you back in a way? I know it's a hard question to answer for yourself, but is there something that you kind of see in your own sort of mindset or in what you're doing day to day that's holding you back from actually getting to that point?
I think mindset is like such a huge thing. I think for everyone, there's imposter syndrome, huge. Like even coming on this podcast, I'm like, I shouldn't be on this. I'm not good enough. But it's just trying to get that mindset, I think sometimes is the hardest thing. Definitely.
You brought up in the beginning talking to other people about being a photographer. And I think that if I can go back on that for a second, especially for you being a nurse, and I'm sure that you work around other people and you have people that you work with all the time, kind of tell them and to say that I am this, I'm now going to go do this and change who you are as a person. That's a hard thing to do. That imposter syndrome does creep in around that, because I'm now identifying as something else that I haven't before as a creative person, and I'm going to put my all into this business. I'm going to have it under my own name as well. I think that that's another thing. Like you are saying, like your business name is saying exactly what you are. How was that transition?
See, it's funny because I thought that, especially with like my work colleagues, I'd find it really hard to talk about the fact that I do photography because, like I said, they'd be like, "You're a nurse. How's this came around?" But it feels right. When people talk to me about it at work, I freely talk about it. Everyone asks how I'm getting on, and yeah, I think just because it feels right, and I'm passionate, and I'm really enjoying it, and I know I can do it. Yeah, I'm in a place where I believe in it and I believe in myself. So,
what would you tell someone who isn't in that position, who isn't as comfortable talking to sort of peers or colleagues about what it is that they're doing? What advice would you give them?
I think to really evaluate what it is that you're doing, because if it doesn't feel right, I think you know.
I get asked all the time, how did you know that this was right for you? And because exactly as you said, like I was so open in talking about it and I felt like it was right for me. Like I had tried other avenues of photography. I'd tried to do other things, other creative things before as well. And just none of them ever stuck as well for me. And being able to talk about it as well, like none of them came as easy speaking about it. Like I didn't feel right to admit that that's what I was working on in my free time. But when it came to this, it was like, no, this actually makes a lot of sense for me and where I am and who I am.
I just wanted to say actually that I do hear a lot of people saying on this podcast that they've always been a really creative person, and like it's something they've always been into. Whereas I wouldn't say that I was ever, or I wouldn't have considered myself to have been a creative person. So like in my family, my brother was always the like artistic one. He was always the one who did really well at art in school. I got kicked out of art class for being too distracting. I used to like take in my art project and think I'd done really well, and then the teacher would be like, no, that's horrendous. And that was kind of my vision of what creativity was, like being artistic, and I can still only draw a stick man, but I'm confident in my photography and my creativity in photography. And it goes to show that creativity is not always what people think it is.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I was going to ask about if you were a creative person. I'm glad to hear that you actually weren't, because I don't think I was either in school. And I think that again informs how we speak about it, because for a lot of people, being creative is not seen as a real job for like first and foremost. But for a lot of people, they have that negative connotation around what it is from when they were at school, or who the artsy type person is, and that they don't want to identify as that. So I think that for you to actually bring that up is great, because you had to sort of push against that and say, well, I'm not the artsy person, but I'm confident in what it is that I do now. And also the fact that I can actually make this a career. It's very different to what a lot of, artists, how they're perceived. Like regardless of what anyone else thinks it is, I'm confident in that, the fact that I can do this and make it successful.
Yeah, and I think you hear so often that like photography is oversaturated. I guess to a certain extent it might be, but I don't feel like that affects me, which again is a huge mindset thing, because that's not usually I would be like, oh no, I can't do it because there's so many other people. But I'm of the mindset now where people choose the photographer because of the person.
Yep. I think the artists that are really successful, outside of even just photographers, artists that are really successful are ones that have actually lived their life outside of art. And so I tell people this all the time. It's like, if you want to improve your photography, go and live out in the world. Like work out how to talk to people, work out who you are, what you bring to the table, why people would come to you as a person first and foremost, not as an artist, but as a person, because that then helps you tell stories. That helps you to interact with people. What do you think it is about you? What's your unique thing that you bring to the table? Why are people choosing you in your own head over other people?
I'm just me. I don't try and pretend to be anything I'm not. And I think the people that choose to book me like that. And I guess if somebody doesn't want to book me for that reason, then that's probably a good thing, because then we might not be a match. And especially for something like a wedding day, you really want to be able to get on with your photographer, because that person's going to be with you all day long. I think, as I said, like there's skills that I can bring over from a nursing. So I've actually had bookings for weddings because of my nursing background, and the fact that I've understood somebody's illness. It's meant they've booked because they've said, okay, yeah, you'll be understanding. You'll be able to know what I can and can't do on the day. And so, like you said, it's just taking experience from other things, regardless of what that is. Being a mum is another one. On family shoots, being able to talk to mums, knowing what little ones are like and how they don't behave half the time. And I always say that makes it more fun. I love it when they're running around doing what they shouldn't be. Makes for a good photo. But just being able to relate to people and them knowing that you understand them, it's really powerful.
It's interesting because I don't think we can actually tell why people are attracted to us. And I think that comes through. We're just being ourselves, and we're the perfect person for the right client. And we don't know why, because we're just ourselves and we can't tell what's unique about us compared to someone else, but they can, because they relate strongly to who we are. So if you just project yourself, and I think this is why it's so hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around, how do I make myself very different or stand out? It's like, just be you. And that is standing out. You don't realize it because to you, you're you. But to other people, you're so far outside of what they are. So have a look at how you perceive other people, and that's how they perceive you. Like, you think that person's really like strange in what they do, and that's a really interesting experience. Like, speaking to you, even like, you have so many more personal experiences that I don't have. Like, you have so many more unique circumstances, and I don't think I have them, but you probably say the same about me. So, because I have things that you don't have. So that is what people come to you for. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact of you being like a mum as well. Like, that plays heavily into it, I'm sure. For a lot of people, like, coming to you for family shoots, like, I don't get many family shoot inquiries because I don't have kids. Like, but also it's not an avenue that I'm interested to go down because of that. So there are tons of different reasons why you start in a particular area and your style comes through that, but then people are attracted to you because of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Is your like personality something that you think helps you now? Because I've always said that there's that sort of performative element in being a photographer, in that you have to have a big personality at some parts of the day.
100%.
I'm kind of the introverted type, and I feel like I very much envy people who that just comes sort of naturally to.
Again, taking skills across from my nursing, I said to my husband, I'm not worried about sort of guiding people in big group shots. I said, I'm used to shouting out announcements to a waiting room full of over 100 people and telling them they've got to wait 7 hours and getting a lot of backlash from that. So
yes, I can imagine it's not a great response from that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Group shots can never go as badly as that. And at the end of it, you can offer them a drink, give them a nice incentive. So
doing someone's family photos is a huge honor. Like, working with anyone, I've always thought, and I think that this is why it's hard to charge for work, because I think it's such a big honor for anyone to ask you to do anything, whether it be family photos, whether it be an engagement session. I've done a ton of like proposals before, where I've photographed proposals, and I think that they're so special in their own way because they're allowing you into that special moment in their life. And so to then put a price on that is hard. How did you come about pricing work and thinking about that when you were first starting, but then also how is it for you now? Like, well, is there something that you've noticed has changed in you, or if you just had a certain understanding in the way that you do things?
I think where I'm still new and I'm at the start of my journey as such, I'm still sort of figuring out pricing. I have put it up slightly, which like you said, is hard to do.
One of the biggest things for me was, I think being myself and understanding that attracting my ideal clients, I think pricing is so heavily connected to that. And I care so deeply about photography and the importance of having your day captured, working as a wedding photographer, but other occasions as well, engagements, proposals, whatever it may be. I understood the importance of having those images. And pricing can sometimes connect to that, in my head anyway. If you're underpricing, you could be turning your ideal clients away. And I think that was a big realization for me early on. I was like, look, I may be like, why are people not as invested as I am? Why do they not care as much as I do? Like, these people are just after a photographer and they just want someone there for the day for an hour or two. Why do they not care about what about all these other things? And realizing that pricing was the thing that it was, because I was turning away the people who really cared because I wasn't charging enough, because to them that sort of signaled that I wasn't invested enough myself because I didn't care enough, because I wasn't charging enough to care.
So many people have said to me, when you put your prices up, you'll get even more inquiries. And you're like, how does that work? But yeah.
And I think also the quality of inquiries increases, because I think it can be very easy when you're first starting to say, I'm not charging so much, I'm getting like heaps of inquiries now. Why do I need to put my prices up? Because I've already got so much work. But the quality of the work will increase because maybe now you're spending, maybe 3 hours a day on like calls with clients, for example, on calls with like potential clients to go through that process of actually booking them in. If you up your prices, maybe you don't get as many inquiries, but a lot more of them will probably convert because they're sold on you and who you are and are happy to spend with you because they know why it is they are with you. Whereas the people, when you're charging less, are just after a bargain and they're like, oh, this person's new, they're cheap, we'll inquire with them, we'll hop on the call, and you've got to spend hours going back and forth on all the small things. When you increase the prices, people are happy to pay what it is because they know that you're a professional and they're just happy for you to handle the whole thing for them.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the reasons I did put my family photography prices up, because I thought I've got to the point where I feel like I've got enough experience in terms of like a portfolio, and it's like, what is that time worth to me to spend away from my family to go and do that photo shoot? So not only what can I give them, but what am I paying to take that time? And for me, it's time away from my family and from my children. So that's one of the reasons I put up my family prices, because I didn't need as many as the inquiries I was getting, because I didn't want to spend as much time or do as many shoots as I was getting for inquiries. So I thought, if I put my prices up, then you have less, but you're getting more back from it, which makes that time worthwhile.
That's a great way, I think, for people to think about it, because like considering, what am I sort of giving up to go do this work? If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to?
Yeah, because that's the thing. I think people think, oh, you're just turning up, you're taking photos, and then that's it. But I think a lot of people don't see the hard work that goes on in the background, and the equipment, and all of the extra, the editing, things like that.
Extra hours of editing has to be taken into account. Like people say, oh, I'm just going to work for an hour. I'm just going to do some family photos for an hour. Well, how long is that going to take you to edit, answer their emails back and forth, upload them, to deal with other things that they may have? They need some other corrections afterwards. How many hours are actually involved? Now think about what you should be charging. Always, I think that is something for a lot of people, that when they agree to something, they don't fully realize what they're agreeing to. And especially with like family photography and wedding photography as well, because it is so far in advance. Like if you book someone now at your prices now, in a year's time, are you still going to be happy in a year's time to be, oh, I'm only working for how much I charged a year ago?
Yeah, exactly. And I think going back to like doing things for free, yes, you might not be getting the monetary value from doing that shoot, but you get value in other ways. So like value in terms of experience. Yes, you're not being paid for it, but you're being paid in other ways, if that makes sense. You're not getting money for it, but you're getting paid in experience and being able to have a portfolio.
I think that's huge. Like for someone to, especially as a wedding photographer, for someone to allow you to come along to their day is huge. Like that is a big blessing. And whether you're being paid or not, like for free, that's a blessing. Like for a lot of people that I shot their wedding for free when I was first starting, they weren't planning to have a photographer, right? So they were going to have their uncle or auntie take photos on their camera that they had or on their phone. They weren't planning to have a photographer. They were having small, intimate days. So for them to allow someone else to come along on that day, like I never underestimate how important that is to them, like how much of a big deal that is, like that they've allowed me to come along. So that is a blessing in and of itself. And then you gain so much from it. Like you are earning more than they are from this exchange. Like, so don't ever underestimate that and think that, oh, I would never work for free, because you're getting, as you said, so much in return, so much experience, invaluable experience for them allowing you to come along.
And then to be able to give them the photos at the end of it is like, that's an honor too, in my eyes. Obviously, you can't think like that forever, because otherwise you'd never have a business.
I think that's one of the reasons I still am in this profession, is because of the joy that it brings me to give people images or to document the days for people, and to actually see how much it means to them after the fact. Like, I think that there is that, I don't know, ego involved, or feeling like it's a nice thing to do. Like there's always going to be that, but I do enjoy that.
That wait for them to text or message back and say, yes, I got them and I like them, or that eager wait.
Because I think there is a lot of artists, a lot of professions that's very like unthankful work, and you don't often get the applause that you probably should. My wife is a social worker, and I'm sure, just like yourself, works with a lot of clients, a lot of hard cases where she doesn't often get thanked for the work. And I will get these big long messages from clients saying how thankful they are for the work that I've done for them. And my wife's always very much like, you didn't really do anything. I work so much harder for my clients, and I don't ever get the thank you that you do. And I'm sure that you feel the same way when you're working like as a nurse, like to get more thanks from clients that are actually paying you to be there, as opposed to people that you're helping.
Yeah, definitely. I've already had more gifts. Well, not that we're allowed to actually accept gifts in nursing anyway. I don't know if that's a rule in your country, but I've had more gifts given to me in this year so far for doing photography.
Yeah, it's a crazy world that other people are, and I think that again goes back to pricing. People are scared to put prices up because they think that, they won't get those really good clients, or clients won't be thankful. But I think they're more thankful, even though they've paid you to come along, they're thankful that you've done the job, because there are so many people out there. And I think that this speaks to what you were saying before, that it's the market is oversaturated. But just because there are so many photographers, that doesn't mean there are so many great photographers. And so when they find someone really good, they're very thankful to have found them. So in a way, you're really doing a service to clients by putting yourself out there and by being you, and to give them an option to choose, because if they didn't have you, who would they go for?
Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to touch on how important were those courses for you in being able to learn skills like, like how to be a photographer, because you weren't a photographer before, but then also how to build your business.
Learning from those people, and from people that have already been and done what you want to do, is really important. So that's why I'm quite passionate about investing in things that can kind of get me to where I want to be, and to do it the right way, and learn from those that are already doing it properly.
Am I correct in saying, apart from your husband, there aren't many other creative people in your sort of inner circle?
No, there isn't. Well, I have friends that are like hairdressers and things like that. I've got a lot to learn from them in terms of the business side of things. So they're always really helpful. But yeah, I'm also super stubborn. So obviously my husband has got his own business, and he's had his since 2019. I'm very stubborn in the sense that I want to learn things for myself. So I'm learning from people like yourself that are kind of where I would want to be. Because I know, although I've spoken about not going somewhere really quickly, I just want to build those solid foundations. I know that you're somebody who does things really in depth, which is why I wanted to do your editing course in your community.
Thank you. That's kind. I'm that person as well that likes to do things my own way, and I was always very stubborn when I first started. I still have a lot of trouble asking for help when I need it, but I wanted to learn a lot of things by myself. But I think the more the more mature I get in my business is understanding that people have done this before, and so if I can glean something from them, if I can ask advice, if I can just get a bit of an advantage by using what they know to help me, that is going to take me so much further and save me so much time as well.
That's the biggest thing. I think it's the saving of time, because I think you can learn these things through other avenues, but to do courses and like dedicated learning on a specific subject just means that I think you get somewhere just a little bit quicker. Because I think if I was learning just off YouTube and things like that, I'd be flitting between, I'll learn this one day and I'll learn that the next day, and just picking up little bits of information, which is obviously really helpful. But I think it gives you a little bit more of a direction when you're doing an actual course.
And I think as well, like going back to what we said as being an artist and pricing our own work, other people care more when they spend more. Like when you pay for a course, you're more invested. And I think when you sign up to be part of a community, a program, whatever it is, like mentoring, it shows your dedication, but then I think it also does push you to give you that thing, because in a business as a creative person, we're working alone most of the time. We don't have someone staring over our shoulder and saying, you have to do this today, this is what the plan is, and so sometimes to have a bit of accountability, to have someone else there, to have something that you've signed up for that's actually moving the needle forward, to saying that, like, for the next 2 months I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can. Well, now you've just, you've given yourself something to work for that other people that are just learning on like YouTube or Instagram or wherever they're learning, they don't have. And any advantage, I think, is a good advantage. And so if you can do that, like you were in a position to do, I think it's super important.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, being new, I'm kind of finding my feet on what works for me and what support I do need. So, like, being part of the community, especially because it's a monthly fee, I thought, well, there's nothing to lose really, because if it doesn't work for me, then I can come out of it if I need to. But also, I think when I came into photography, I did think it was going to be super lonely, because coming from a nursing background and always working with other people. But actually, I found quite the opposite. I find that actually the community is just amazing. If you've got a question, then there's always somebody to ask.
I also think that you are who you surround yourself with, and that's so important when you're first starting, is to get yourself in with good people. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to become best friends with every other photographer in your area. It just means that start speaking to or start putting yourself in places where these people hang out. And I've always been the biggest believer in that you're not going to find any opportunity in your bedroom, in your office, home office. There's no opportunities there. You've got to go out in the real world and find them for yourself, and go speak to people, even online. Like I'm a big believer in that as well. Like a lot of people are isolated in where they are in the world, and that's okay. I understand. I'm in Australia. I'm in the opposite end of the world to a lot of people. So find those people online. Get yourself in an online community, an online course with other people, speak to people who you aspire to be like. And I think that actually drives you so much. And I remember when I was first starting, speaking to people and hearing their success inspired me to do more, because I'm like, I can actually make this work. Like, not being from a creative background myself, I was like, is this a viable option, or is this just something that people do on the side? Like, I don't know. But hearing it from other people helps so much.
if you are at the beginning like me, I kind of don't know any other way to do it apart from the ways that I've learned, which are tried and tested. So I think if you're starting good habits from the beginning, then that's the way you've always worked. And of course, that's not possible for everyone because not everyone's at the start of their journey. But if you get those things in place, then it's good because, yeah, like I said, I kind of know no other way to do it other than there's no right way, of course. And which is why it's important, I think, to learn from different people to pick up a few different ways of doing things.
I also think that was interesting that you said you didn't want to learn everything or didn't want to lean too heavily on your husband. And I think I'm sure that you are sort of like learning things from him by just being in sort of close proximity. And I'm sure you have a lot of conversations, so you've learned a lot, but expanding that. And I think that this is for a lot of people, and I don't want to generalize, but people who go to school for photography, I think come out with a very cookie cutter way of doing photography because they've only learnt one particular style, and it may work in an industrial environment where you have to churn things out on a sort of regular basis, but there often isn't a lot of creativity in it, and you can't build your own personal style or way of doing things when you're just learning in a classroom with 100 other people. So again, go and find multiple people to learn from. And I don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. As you said, there's no right or wrong way to do things. So go and learn from as many different people as you can, and you will know what's right for you. You'll take little bits and pieces from all over the place, and it's amazing where you can learn things from when you actually are open to learning.
Definitely. I've got photographer friends who have done degrees and have said that they weren't worth that. Like they have said that you don't need to have a degree to do photography, which is great for me because I don't, obviously. Yeah. And I think in terms of being, as I said, stubborn and wanting to learn for myself, I think, again, that's a little bit of a mindset thing because I feel like I want to be able to sort of bring something to the table. I don't want to feel like I'm being reliant. I want to be able to say, well, I know this and I've learned this. So a little bit of a selfish thing, really.
I think everyone has that. I think everyone wants to have an up or have something that they know over someone else, but especially for you, having your husband right there with you all the time, you're like, oh, have a guess what I learned today that you don't know. I can do this, you can't.
He's super jealous that I'm speaking to you, by the
way. Oh, that's special. That's kind. What would be, that piece of advice that you would give to someone just starting, like where you were? And I know it hasn't been long for you, but I'm sure that you've learned so much, even in this short period of time. What advice would you give to someone who was in your position, maybe this time last year, who didn't even have it on their radar, and it was just an idea in the back of their head that they could possibly do this one day?
Just to start, and small steps to keep going and putting yourself in positions that you aren't comfortable in. So this podcast, for example, I was brave and just went for it and approached you and asked if you wanted somebody that was a little bit newer in their journey to speak to, because I had said to you that a lot of the people that have been on your podcast are already very experienced and not everybody's there yet. So I was hoping that some people could resonate with what I'm saying, and that in the sense I'm much newer in my journey. But yeah, just having the confidence to actually just put yourself out there, go for it, and small steps. I love that picture of the ladder that's got the small steps and the big steps. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you can't get to the next step if you're just trying to make huge jumps, but just doing little small steps and you'll get somewhere.
Exactly. It adds up over time. And also, I do want to say, big sort of shout out to you for actually reaching out, having the confidence to ask to be on the podcast. I think that that's huge. Like, again, like we talk about it, but it's those small things when you're first starting. Like, have the confidence, reach out to someone if you're struggling, even like reach out to someone in your community who's an artist, a creative as well, and talk to them. You can get so much from so many different people. So the reason I started this podcast was to have conversations with other people. Like I wouldn't
I would be lying if I said this wasn't to like scratch my own itch and to be able to interview other people. It's weird to say, hey, can I just have a conversation with you for an hour? But if you have a podcast, you can all of a sudden interview people for an hour and they're happy to be on it. So do things that scare you, put yourself in positions that feel unnatural, because they will be the places that you actually grow and learn the most.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I approached you, I definitely didn't think you'd say yes. And then I was like, oh no.
Oh no, you said yes. Damn it.
I think, like I said, everybody else that you've had on your podcast in the past have been, well, I look at them and think they're really cool, collected, and they've already got it all together. And there's me, brand new. I think I've got 390 followers.
As we were saying before, I think you can't see why. You can't see it about yourself, but I'm sure other people are saying about you how you're so cool being on here right now and being in the position and what you've done and what you've achieved. I think we always undersell ourselves. So I think you need to always give yourself, your own applause as well.
Yeah, and like you always say, I think there's always somebody, there might be somebody out there who was me 8 months ago thinking, should I start a business or should I just do this for fun? So I could hopefully there's somebody listening out there who I can help.
I think this conversation will have helped a lot of people, Danielle. And is there anything else that you would like to leave everybody with before we round this episode out? Any advice, any sort of learnings from yourself, any sort of quotes that have really helped you, anything at all that you would like to give to the people?
As I said, my biggest tip would be to put yourself in those circles, learn from people who are doing what you want to be doing, and just remember that your journey is your journey. Don't aspire to be doing what other people are doing straight away, or like some people want to jump in and go full force straight away. Some people can't do that, and that's okay. Some people want to do photography full time. Some people want to do it alongside another job. So there's no, as I said before, no right or wrong way to do it, as long as you're enjoying it. And that's, I think, the main thing. Make sure you are still enjoying it.
I think that's a great place to leave this episode. Danielle, where can people find more about you, about your business, your journey? Where can people stay up to date with what it is that you're doing? Because I'm sure if the past 8 months are anything to go by, the next 12 are going to be crazy for you. Where can people go and find more about your work?
So you can find me on Instagram on Danielle Henry Photography, or you can pop onto my website, which is www.daniellehenryphotography.com.
Amazing. I'll leave those links down below so that people don't have to enter that into the search bar. But thank you so much for coming on today, Danielle. It was honestly, amazing to speak to you. And I think I did say this when you first reached out. I think I often forget what it was like starting, and I have to put myself in those shoes of what are the questions that people have and what are the struggles that people are going through when they're first starting, because you do get to a point where you get so far removed from that starting point. You have to be like constantly reminding yourself, and for you to have reached out, I think, was a good reminder. So hopefully this episode can help a lot of people who are in that position and are aspiring to be just like you.
Yeah, I hope so too. And thank you so much for having me and making me feel so at ease, because I was very nervous, but
I couldn't tell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you so much.
Well, that is the end of today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation half as much as I enjoyed having it. If you did enjoy today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you did leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. Or if you're watching over on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave us a comment down below to let us know that you did enjoy this episode. Also, feel free to share this episode on Instagram and tag me at Mike Jeffrey Photography so I can reshare them on my stories. And also message me and let me know who you would love to hear on an upcoming episode of this podcast. I've always tried my best to be able to have conversations with people who are in the creative space and people that I think would be a good fit on this podcast. And I would love your input as well. In a very privileged position at the moment where, I'm able to reach out to people and have them on my podcast and have really interesting conversations conversations with a whole range of people in the creative space and talk about their creative journey. So if there is anyone you would love to hear from, please let me know and I will do my best to try to get them on the podcast. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge the first creatives of the land on which I am recording today, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of so-called Australia. As we tell stories of today, I just want to reflect on how First Nations people here and across the globe have guided and informed our understanding of the creative journey. But until next week, friends, have a lovely week and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye. Editing and post-production on this episode was done by Mossy Heart Media, and music was created by J.W. Payton.
Hey Mike.